I'm Devorah Wallen, and I'd like to share my Tea for Two, my Torah thought, for 2 minutes, more or less. This week's Torah portion is Parshas Shemos, which literally means names. It begins enumerating the names of the children of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob and his family. In this parsha, we are introduced to Moshe, who is born somewhat miraculously. Since Pharaoh decreed that every boy that is born should be thrown into the Nile, and every girl should be allowed to live, Moshe was born early and needed to be hidden. Yocheved, his mother, made a wicker basket and caulked it up with bitumen and pitch. She placed the baby into the Nile along the reeds. Miriam, his older sister, watched from a distance to see what would happen. It says that Basia, the daughter of Pharaoh, Paro, came down to bathe in the Nile while her maids walked along the riverside. She saw the basket among the reeds and asked one of her servants to fetch it. When she opened it and saw that it was a baby crying, she took pity on it and said, Miyalde ha'ivrim zeh. This must be a Hebrew child. What made her think it was a Hebrew child? The first Rashi on this verse says that Basia saw the Shekhinah, God's presence with him. Then the verse says, V'ha'na'ar bocheh. Behold, the lad was weeping. Although he was a little child, a yeled, his voice was that of a grown person. What is the significance of these two words, yeled and na'ar? It almost sounds as if she were speaking about two individuals. One of the commentators, the Ramban, says that she saw that he was circumcised and figured that out. However, he also says that that would have meant she had to remove his clothes to verify it. A more beautiful interpretation the Sforno gives is that she recognized that this was a crying infant, but the sound of his voice sounded like an older child. The Rebbe of Sukkotchov explains it as follows. When a baby cries, he's crying for his own needs. He's either hungry or thirsty, needs a diaper change, or needs to be held. As a child grows up and becomes less self-absorbed and more self-sufficient, he develops a capacity for empathy and sensitivity to others. Such a person can cry because of the pain and suffering he feels for them. Basia noticed that he was crying like an older child, as if he were in tune with the suffering of the Jewish people in Egypt at that time. This is how she was able to conclude that this was a Hebrew child. She knew that the Jewish people are sensitive and caring people. As it says in the Talmud Yevamos, Jews are Rachmanim, Baishanim, V'gomlei Chasodim. We are merciful and compassionate, private, and do acts of kindness. Basia's observation was only a foreshadowing of what Moshe would be as he grew up. There are many obvious examples of his caring and compassionate nature. For instance, he advocated for a Jew who was killed by an Egyptian. As a shepherd, he looked out for the needs of each of his flock. He advocated on behalf of his grumbling and stiff-necked nation, and more. Because of the sensitivity of this faithful shepherd, God considered him fit to lead the Jewish people out of Egypt. The daughter of Pharaoh saw these qualities when she saw this small child, as if he were a young adult, crying on behalf of his people. Although we have our own individual needs, and we might behave like a yeled, crying out for our own personal things, since we all have a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu in us, we also have the capacity for mercy and altruism for others. May we all strive to follow Moshe's compassionate example.